Just waiting for a couple of ribs to cook. I've just got about 4 left to go. In the meantime, I thought I'd clean up the engine bed here and just lay it in the boat, see how close it fits. I know on my own boat, 1923 Disc Pro that I have, the engine bed was very loose, and you could tell it was loose because when you looked at the dashboard, you could see the controls kind of moving in and out as the engine was kind of lifting and settling down. Part of that, I think, is because at the back here, on mine, I tried a few easier ways. I mean, here, these are, originally it was just 2 3.5-inch nails driven in through the dashboard into the back of the yoke. Engine beds, they eventually loosen up. You can see here how the holes have been kind of stretched. I noticed here at some point somebody had added a couple of screws. I know in my own boat, in the end I had 4-inch long screws in the back here trying to keep it from lifting, because what happens with the thrust of the engine, it'll want to go like this out of the boat. So anyway, I'm going to lay it in and see. I know Paul wanted to try and save this. I mean, he said it was a lot of really tricky things here that are important. Like here is the, I'm going to take this phone out of the holder here. A lot of interesting things here. These are the notches where the starter bridge goes. That's kind of mortised into the engine bed a little bit. And that's all in relation to where the starter drum is and where the engine is. Also on the other side here, this is where the recoil pulley goes. I've got the holes here. I mean, it's a lot of information, a lot of things that fit. I find though on boats, the component approach does not work that well usually. I mean, if you're restoring a car, you just call somebody who's got another fender and you bolt that onto your car to replace the dented and mangled fender beyond repair, and it's going to fit. All of these boats were individual. All of the seat parts and everything else were numbered because they aren't interchangeable from boat to boat. They'll be pretty close, but everything was kind of fitted to the boat. So anyway, I'm going to lay this engine bed in here and see how well it looks. Yeah, I've got the engine bed laying in the boat here. One thing I notice immediately is that the front part does not fit perfectly on top of the rib, which it should. I mean, there are a couple of screws that go through the planking and through the rib to secure it. I could take it apart and re-notch these so this front bulkhead part lines up with the rib. That's one option, but then I'm looking at the bottom here. I don't know whether I can get that with a camera. It's maybe 1/8 of an inch difference there in shape. I mean, I could trim that, but that would lower this a bit. I do notice here, these side pieces here, they don't really fit right on top of the ribs. I know on my own boat when I made new engine beds, they fit perfectly on top of all the ribs. So they're adding a lot of support to the ribs here. The other thing on the back here, these are factory. They were added to stiffen up the dashboard. So I'm just debating with myself whether it might be easier to make new engine beds, or maybe what I'll do is I'll see if I can take it apart without too much effort. I've got 2 screws in here. I believe they're, I think from memory serves me correctly, they're just a couple of 3.5-inch nails whacked into the front here that hold it. But sometimes, you know, by the time I've stripped this, degreased it, and then I've got the holes in the end here. This is the dashboard where the nails were driven through. It's hard to tell at the bottom. Those are the nails that were driven through at the bottom to hold the engine bed securely. I'm thinking, as I'm thinking out loud here, I think I will change these battens on the back here. I have lots of plank scrap to do that. That way I'll have fairly solid backing behind the dash. If I do put screws into the end grain here, it'll have something solid to pull against. And if I made new ones, I could basically just make them so they're landing on the ribs here. It's pretty close here, but it's not perfect. On the inside here, it's easy to tell where they're, it wasn't beveled originally. I like to make them so they're beveled and it has a full bearing on the rib. It's a bit of work, but I think it's worth it. The other thing, a lot of people would just duplicate all of these notches and holes. That's one of those things where I would have to put the engine in place, line up the shaft, and then I fit the starter and then make up those notches. I've done it a couple of times. It's been a while, but it's not something you just kind of trace it and then slap it together. It never works. I think if I do take this apart though, what I will do is I'll get a scrap of wood and I am going to drill some holes in it just to mark the position of where these engine bolts go. Hopefully I can get them out. I think I've just talked myself into making a new engine bed. But if I do, I'm going to try and reuse these, I think they're called hanger bolts. It's like a lag screw at the bottom, 2 nuts at the top. Hopefully it's greasy enough I can probably just wind the things out. But I think what I'll do is I'll just take this out and just make a template for the relocation of the bolts when I do make a new engine bed. Just going to make a pattern for the bolt holes. Got a nice impression of the bolts. I'm just going to mark it. So this is the forward. Also make sure I mark that this is the bottom, so then when I've got to relocate the bolts, all I have to do is lay this on with this edge in front of these, lined up with these, and I should have a fairly repeatable position. Of course, when I put the device in, everything's going to change too. I think this boat has a 1.5 inch universal joint, so the alignment is going to be pretty important as well. Okay, I've made up this piece of wood here. It lines up with the front. Got it marked. It's just nested on top of the holes. I drilled it a little undersized, but it seems to be pretty well in the center of all 4 bolts. What I have to do now is put this somewhere where I'm not going to lose it. Next one. I've just been around the entire boat with a sander. There are only a couple of ribs that didn't change. One is this one here at the back. I didn't change that one because it's kind of a case of Z. To change this one, it's been notched to receive the in whale here. To change that rib would involve taking out the back deck, which would be a difficult job. Here there's screws that go into it, and I'd have to mess up the gunnel to get at it. Because this is also mainly behind the back seat back, I don't think it's really worth the effort. I did do all the other ones though, including the ones that go through the seat here. This was probably one of the most difficult ones here, was through this seat. It's full length. Goes just below the device. In the middle here I have the device pattern in. This is where I've joined the two keels, and that's from the very beginning, where I located where this goes by the joint in the keel. So I'll cut that out. I think I might make the slot a little bit wider. This boat has an 1.5 inch universal joint, so I think I'll make it a little bit wider. Sometimes the 1.5 inch universal joints, if you have to change the prop shaft, it's a little difficult to get it out through the standard slot. The dashboard has been scraped, stripped, sanded, scraped, stripped, sanded. It is probably totally 100% oil impregnated, and there's really nothing I can do about that. On the seats here, there are a few iron marks, but I have given it a light brushing of very weak oxalic acid. It's still a little wet right now. But in the morning, what I'm going to do is just give it maybe a couple of coats of varnish. I didn't get really carried away up here in the front there. That's going to be where the gas tank is anyway. And the seat back, it's not really going to be visible up there, but all of the ribs back here where they're visible, they're all changed. I think as far as stripping the inside of one of these boats, changing the ribs is the only way to do this. I think you get new ribs for free, and the amount of labor you save by taking them out to clean up the inside of the planking. Back here where I've taken those seat blocks out, I had to chisel these blocks out, so I've just got new blocks in here. I just put them in with a little light dab of epoxy, mainly to keep them from splitting when I screw the blocks back in.
Yes, so we are going to get the Bear Chamber Cover Paint in Brilliant Business Awards. They have the Liberty was sold out. It is an incredible day. It's so motivational, and it's a lot of fun. So we'll be posting pictures, and then the winners will be awarded. And then fun to win. I do. And then tomorrow, we'll be getting the spring on. Yeah. That's right. We've got the green on.
He needs to turn wheels on because they look like a car.
No.
The load against the assets that just must be achieved because Parliament prorogued.
Because my sense is you need an act of Parliament in order to be able to seize the cash, is that right?
You absolutely do, that's absolutely right. So what the Finance Ministry is able to do without Parliament approval is move the money that is in Euroclear, that is in Canadian dollars. So we have the legal right to move that really. If that happens, without the Canadian Finance Ministry doing anything, this money is going to be returned to Russia, and we would be responsible for giving back $20 billion back to Putin in